All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Better Than Rich show. I'm so excited to be here with you, and I am again joined by my co-host, Mike Abramowitz. Mike, how you doing this morning?
Feeling good. South Carolina right now, making
Yeah,
our way
man,
up.
we've been kind
West
of like all
Virginia.
over the place as we're getting this thing started. I was in Dallas.
Yeah.
Where are you at in South Carolina?
We're outside of Columbia on our
Okay.
way up to West Virginia. So
And
it's
what's
been
the
nice.
purpose of this trip?
This is the 3-year anniversary that my wife and I are
Mm,
celebrating. So
awesome, man.
it's going to be
Congratulations.
nice.
So excited for
Yeah.
you. Hope you guys have a blast. I heard you have some pretty, kind of cool stuff on the docket in West Virginia. Like what's the plan?
Yeah. We're going to a place called the Greenbrier.
Okay.
It's a very, very bougie, uppity type of experience. We're gonna do like a
Cool.
horse and carriage, play a
Mm,
$500 round of golf,
mm.
send the wife to this, get a facial, and have a. I got to wear my tuxedo to dinner. Put it that way. So it's gonna be a
Nice.
royalty
Nice.
type of treatment. My
And,
wife deserves it, and
mm,
it's been a great journey these last couple of years. So it's gonna be
right.
nice.
Awesome, man. Well, congratulations. Enjoy your third wedding anniversary. And yeah, I can't imagine what a $500 round of golf is going to be like, but I can't wait to hear more about it.
Me
So
neither.
today, our topic is leadership. And we're going to be talking all about leadership principles, timeless leadership principles that can help you go from being average to being great. Obviously, that's a journey that I think every leader at some point needs to take. Obviously, Mike, you can talk a little bit about your journey from average to being number one in your category and winning a bunch of prizes and trophies and trips and everything that you've been on. But really, these timeless leadership principles don't change, and we're going to talk to you guys about many of them. We are live, and if you want to jump in the chat and ask some questions about leadership, I definitely feel like this is one of my areas of expertise, and I can't wait to dive in. But kicking things off, we have to ask ourselves, what is the idea of leadership in the first place? So I want to give kind of a definition. I want to see what you think, Mike. When I think about leadership, leadership is that which creates progress. Leadership is what creates progress in this world. There's problems. Leaders turn problems into progress. Leaders turn uncertainty into progress. And so really it's the energetic of making things better. Whenever we are attempting to make something better, we're exercising leadership. Now, sometimes people say, hey, I'm not in a leadership position. I'm an individual contributor, or maybe I'm a member of a team. I'm not even in business or sales. But here's the thing. Leadership has nothing to do with your position, and it has everything to do with how you show up on a daily basis. I've run companies where there's leaders in all facets of the organization, in logistics, in planning, in operations, in strategy, of course, in sales and marketing and business as well. But you don't have to have a leadership title to be a leader. All you have to do is be committed to making things better than they were before you got on the scene. Mike, what do you think about this definition of leadership and what's coming up for you so far?
I can't say I've ever heard that definition, but I love it.
Right.
I think that is spot on. And the reason why I think it is spot on because it's relevant to what a lot of the cliche leadership definitions might be. Like, some of the cliche definitions are like managers manage systems where leaders manage people. Leave today better than you found it. In fact, I asked a question on my Facebook a couple weeks ago of like, how would you define a leader? And there's a lot of cliche. A leader knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way.
Mm.
Like there's all these different cliche definitions of how to define leadership. But I really like what you just said, which is to move progress. How'd you say it? Say it one more time. That was so eloquent.
Yeah, it's just that which produces progress. So leadership produces progress, and if we are committed to making things better than we found them, then we're practicing leadership. Whether we're in a leadership position or we're just a member in a club or a committee, or practicing just being a great neighbor, you can be a leader in any sort of context if you are committed to making things better. So yeah, man, I love it. And, talking a little bit about leadership principles, one of the things I was thinking about leading into this, and I teach my community, is that ultimately when we're thinking about next level leadership, we need to be committed to playing the long game. And I know that's something that you've been committed to. I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. But playing the long game really means just, I like to use this analogy to help people understand what it means to play the long game in business. And the analogy I like to use most frequently for this is the NBA. And a few years ago, Greg Popovich, who's kind of one of the best coaches in the NBA, he's known for getting the most out of his talent. He's also known for like making stars. Kawhi Leonard really wasn't much of anything until he worked with Popovich. And Greg Popovich, coach of the San Antonio Spurs, he started thinking differently about how to win championships. And here's what he did. Of course, the question is, what's the point of an NBA game? Well, obviously, the point of the NBA game is to win. But then if you think about it, what's the point of an NBA season? Well, the point of an NBA season is to win the championship. And if I'm leveraging my team's health, if I'm leveraging my team's energy, if I'm leveraging, things in the short term to win this game at the expense of losing the championship, then I've lost the season. So Greg Popovich started thinking about this. He said, okay, how can I actually make sure, especially with some of my older stars, that we have enough energy and health for the postseason? And what he started doing is resting his players from time to time and actually strategically losing games in the middle of the season so that he could win the long game. And as leaders, we need to be thinking this way. We need to be thinking, okay, here I am. I'm in a relationship with somebody. If I try to win every single exchange, if I try to win every single interaction with them and get the better of the exchange and try to leverage all my social capital with them in this moment, I might be sacrificing some long-term gains. And obviously, in any relationship, especially in any business context where someone's getting better at a job over time, most of the gains are to be had much later down the road. So I'm curious what you think about this idea of like playing the long game, winning the meta game of leadership, and not trying to win every exchange, but just trying to win the long game that you're playing here in life. What do you think, Mike?
It's very relevant to me right now in my business with Vector and Cutco because um, our our district team is on the verge of doing something that's never been done before. To give some context, this year we're going to be number one, and we're over $2 million in sales as a district team right now. And the record all time for a district team is 2.6 million, which has been standing for the better part of 10 years. And we have a chance at doing that next year. We have 10 managers that are ready to open up offices next summer. We're going from, essentially, including mine, we're going from 4 offices to 11 offices. So we're going to grow exponentially as a district team next summer. We are going to go from 4, maybe 5 assistant managers working in my office to a better part of 15 or 16 assistant managers in my organization. So we have a lot of development. So in order to build towards something that's never been done before, building a division inside my district, I need to think differently. So right now in this season, our busy season is next summer. We'll do, out of the 3 million that we want to do, we got to do about 2 million of that during the summer. So in order to build towards that, each individual conversation I have every week, I have anywhere from 18 to 22 individual one-on-one 20-minute conversations. A lot of it is about, next summer, and sometimes taking your concept to the metagame of, they might not have a good sales week this week. They might not want to do anything this week. They might be overwhelmed with school this week. They might be having a challenge at home this week. So I'm not going to press them. I'm not going to, oh, if you don't get to that $500 this week, you're going to, miss out on next summer. It's like, that's not the conversation. The conversation is like, I get it. You got a lot to do. Let's handle it. We got 25 weeks from now until season. So, hey, no big deal. When you're ready to recover, no big deal. But let's talk about, what do you need right now? What's going to serve you at the highest level right now? And being willing to say, I might not get the extra sales or the extra recruits or whatever it might be right now, but it's going to build towards this big, beautiful, unbelievable vision for 2021 and beyond, because then that's foundational, where we can recreate what it means to think big as a district team.
Hmm.
If next year, 2021, I mean, we just opened up Tampa in 2019. So within 2 years to go from um, $1 million district team to a $1.5 million district team to over a $2 million district team this year, and then take a quantum leap to over a $3 million district team next year. Who knows what the next quantum leap could look like? I know we have it mapped out, and I have like a 3 to 5 year vision of what that could look like, which we could get into it at another point, but
Sounds exciting.
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. And what I found is that when you respond that way to people, when you treat people that way, and you don't treat them as um, these items to be used, you don't treat them as numbers on a balance sheet, you don't treat them as um, some sort of like capital, like human capital that you have on your squad, only to have every bit of sales squeezed out of them every single week, then they respect that. They appreciate that. They say, wow, this person actually really appreciates me. They care about me and my journey and what's actually in alignment. And what I see a lot of managers do or would do in that situation, Mike, would kind of go into scarcity mode and say, yeah, well, we did really well 3 months ago, but now we're kind of starting to drop off and sales aren't exactly where we'd like. I gotta get in people's faces and I gotta rile them up and I gotta challenge them. And hey, there's definitely a time and a place for challenge when you see like somebody is not exactly showing up the way they need to. We can talk about that a little bit later. But a lot of times what someone needs is just more curiosity, right? Just to lean in and say, hey, look, what's going on here? How can we figure this out? What's a win-win sort of look like for me and you? Not just this week, not just this month, but what about this year? What about in the next 3 years? And if you're having these sorts of conversations with people, they really respond. They appreciate that. And then they don't want to leave, not just because they don't have options. Of course they have options because you've trained them really well, but because you've created the best option for them. And I think that's really cool. So anything else you want to say on that when you say, okay, giving people the benefit of the doubt, giving people space to go on their journey and playing the long game, how do they tend to respond when you do that for them?
They know I care. I mean, that's a lot of what leadership is. It's leadership is leading. We have a hashtag in our organization, leaders lead. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very simple hashtag, but what does it mean to lead? It doesn't necessarily mean to follow me. It means to think differently. Oftentimes, think with the other person's like think with empathy. And sometimes I need to do that. And in order for me to show up and give empathy to them and for them, I often need to show up and give empathy and show up for myself. Hence why we had previous conversations on this podcast about meditation and self-care and self-awareness, because if I'm not taking care of myself, then I might project onto them. If I'm playing injured,
Hmm.
see, playing injured, it's good. It's a good solution sometimes. It's not a long-term solution, but
Mm-hmm.
it's good. It's good to play injured. We learn a lot. But man, fatigue, it makes cowards of all of us. So if I'm playing injured emotionally and I go into a conversation with someone who's also playing injured emotionally, there's a chance that I'm going to project some of my own insecurities or tendencies onto them, and I'm not going to serve them at the highest level. So that's why I got to handle my stuff on my own time so I can show up and serve them. Hence, hashtag leaders lead. I got to lead myself before I can lead you. And in order for me to lead you, I need to empathize with you, and
Mm-hmm.
that takes more energy. That takes a little bit more focus, that takes more intentionality, that takes the ability to listen, that takes patience, that takes a desire to understand. And
Hmm.
sometimes that is tough. That is
Sure.
tough to do, which is
Sure.
why the price of leadership sometimes is sometimes a costly one.
Right. I love what you said. Playing injured is okay sometimes, but not as a long term strategy. It's like playing injured is good if it's game 7 and you need to win, but let's face it, in business, there's always another game. There's always another, you know, um, play to be had. There's always another way to go. And so we really shouldn't be playing injured almost ever in business, unless it's a super, super, super busy time in our business and we're experiencing massive growth. So Yeah, I love that idea. One of the principles I was going to talk about here that I wrote down, that I really believe is like a presupposition of a great leader. And what a presupposition is like a core belief, and it's a lens that we look into the world with. We look into our relationships with. I was talking to my community about this last night, and I was saying, okay, hey, let's say you and your dog go on a walk, and you're going on a hike. It's this beautiful landscape. You're walking up the mountain, and you get to the top of the mountain, and you look out, and all of a sudden you see this amazing, beautiful rainbow out in front of you. And I asked them, I said, hey, who's going to enjoy the rainbow more, you or your dog? And of course, they said, well, I will. I said, why? They said, well, the dog is colorblind. And so the idea here is that, well, the lens that you look into the world is going to shape your perception. And a great leader has certain belief systems that they look into the world with, that they look into their relationships with, that is very different than the average leader. It's very different than the non-leader. And one of the belief systems that I see great leaders have is that everything is possible. Everything is achievable. And by the way, I'm not some sort of rah-rah guy. I don't really love to hype things up too much, but I really love this idea that everything is achievable with the appropriate strategy. And if we can look at the world that way, that, every time someone comes to us and says, hey, I want to accomplish this, or I want to start my own business, or I want to, make $1 million next year. I had someone come and say, I want to be one of the 100 most influential people in the world, when I'm older. I said, okay, cool. Like, what are we going to do to get there? Like, what's step one? What's step two? What's step three? How are we going to make it happen? You're talking about doing a $3 million district at some point. 2.6 million is the record. Like, the question isn't, is this going to happen? The question is, how are we going to make it happen? And that's a very different question that I think leaders ask that non-leaders don't. A lot of times they're simply going to write things off because it seems impossible, or because someone coming to them with a big goal, they're actually thinking bigger than the leader is themselves, and they feel threatened and they want to throw cold water on it. What do you think, Mike?
I think that oftentimes the leaders are sometimes they put pressure on themselves and they lead from ego sometimes, and like a self-righteousness where they have, because kind of like what you said, like they have a title, so they don't, you don't necessarily need, so they're position based leaders. So they're leading from a position, or they're leading towards a direction, so they're directional leaders. So a directional leader might say, so a directional leader might sound like this: I'm building a $3 million district team. You are really good at working with people. I need you in my vision to build this $3 million district team. Come with me. Let's go in this direction. So it's like a directional leader, and that works. It's like, I have a vision, you're coming with me, and we're going to go. However, I don't know if that's sustainable for a long period of time, because that person might develop resentment if it's directional leadership, if it's only based upon my direction. So I want to also know what their lens is. I want to know, what do you want? What is important to you? What are qualities that you currently possess, and what are the qualities that you want to strengthen and you want to get better at? What is it that you see for yourself in the future? If life played out perfectly, what could it look like? Cool. How could this be a vehicle to get you closer to where you want to go instead of further away from where you want to go? Who do you need to become? And can this vehicle help you get there? That way, they're going to be anchored to my direction by their reasons versus mine.
Mm-hmm. Totally. What I hear you saying there is that great leaders know what their people want, right? Can't even tell you how many times I talk to leaders and people in positions of leadership, and business owners, and people in high-powered positions, and I ask, okay, I'm struggling with managing this person. How do I fix it? And I said, well, what do you think they want? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, why not? Like, why didn't you ask them? Like, wasn't that like the very first conversation you had with them? No, I didn't. And everyone is hiring to fit someone into their vision, as opposed to saying, what's your vision, Mike? How can we align our visions and find a win-win? Um, I think this is something you're really good at is win-win relationships. I'll kind of kick it to you and let you vamp on this a little bit. But yeah, talk to me about win-win relationships. How do you approach a relationship to ensure it's win-win? How do you make sure you don't settle for less than win-win? What does that mean to you? Talk to me a little bit.
In order to know what a win-win relationship is, I think it's important for you to also know what is not a win-win. So the concept is I win, you lose. That's one type of relationship. And then there's a you win and I lose. That's another type of relationship. Then there's a you win and maybe I win. Then there's an I win and maybe you win. Then there's the win-win. So I think it's important just to give context of, okay, if you're in a relationship, there's several different types of relationships it could be, but a true win-win is that my needs are your needs are my needs. We're in this together. We're both going to win. We're both going to thrive because of this. And I want to make sure that you're equally benefiting as I am. Now, how does that work? Well, that comes from number one, I need to know what winning looks like for me. So I need to make sure that it's very clear. And I created almost like standards or expectations or a box of like, how do I define winning for me? I would also need that other person to clearly define what does winning look like for them. I want to make sure there's clear definitions of what does winning look like. How do we describe it? What does it feel like? How do we quantify it? So that way the rules of the engagement are clearly stated in the beginning. I think that's really important to get as close to that as possible. So that way we have boundaries. Once those boundaries are created, then we can go and say, okay, um, this is what I'm willing to tolerate, and these are my expectations and standards. What are you willing to tolerate? What are your expectations and standards? Great. Do we have agreements that if and when one of us are not following suit with this, it's no longer a win-win? Okay. And if it's no longer a win-win, then it's going to need to be addressed. And I think setting that framework in the beginning of a relationship is really critical. And that way we have something foundational. So that way, if and when someone is not holding the line and doing their part, we can revisit the original agreements of what we discussed in the first place. And I think oftentimes it's overlooked because sometimes it's uncomfortable, or sometimes we don't know because we're so often just go mode that we don't take a time to actually think, and we don't quantify, and we don't actually look at what do I want.
Hmm.
And that sometimes is step one when it comes to being a leader. It's like, what do I want, and what do you want? So I think that's that, in my opinion, that's a foundation for the win-win concept and the win-win relationship.
Totally, totally. And it's also being willing to let people go if it's not a fit. Sometimes something's just not a win-win and there's no way to make it happen. And that doesn't mean that that relationship has to end. That doesn't mean that, there's anything there has to be any ill will there. It might be a little disappointing. It might be a little sad sometimes to see a relationship change or move or watch someone move on from your organization because there's no way to find a win-win anymore, but that's okay. And having an abundant attitude means I don't need any single person on my team. I'd love to have them, but I don't need any single person. And I think that so many people get attached to keeping people inside their organization simply for familiarity or comfort or the cost of change, and they kind of settle for something less than win-win. And I see this happen all the time. I think we really need to raise the standard if we're going to be great leaders to say, I want everyone in my organization to be winning, and winning as much as possible. And everything that everybody I have a conversation with, everything that I'm talking about is really aimed towards that win-win relationship. So super important to have that abundant attitude to say, we're going there with or without you. This is my vision. I'm going to get there. I don't know exactly what the timing looks like, but I know where we're headed. We'd love to have you on the team. Here's why. Here's how I could potentially see you fit in. But what do you think? Do you think this is a win for you? Okay. If not, what would you need to make it a win? What do you value? What's important to you? And also understand that people have different values. So the exchange to make it a win-win is not simply a monetary exchange. Sometimes people just think time for money, or they think how much money am I making in a month or in a year. But there's a lot of ways that people can be compensated. People can be compensated in the form of experience. People can be compensated in the form of fulfillment with their work. People can be compensated in making an impact, which is important to them. People can be compensated with flexibility, right? People can also be compensated psychically. Maybe you have like a title or a position that, allows you some status or prestige, or allows you to make a better resume. So understand that there's a lot of different ways that someone can be compensated, and be willing to help them get that compensation and make it a win-win in some form or fashion. So, by the way, we lost Mike. Hopefully he'll be back on soon. I will go to my next one that I was going to talk about, which is the idea that the past does not equal the future. The past does not equal the future. And this is really just the idea that I don't care where you're at today. I don't care where you came into this podcast from. If you've been thriving or if you've been struggling, either way, it's okay. The past does not equal the future. And a great leader has that lens. A great leader thinks, okay, at any point in time, I can shift and my people can shift. It doesn't matter if I've tried to, lose weight 5 times in the past. This time it can be different. Doesn't matter if I've shot for this goal 5 times in the past. This time it can be different if I simply make a decision. So the past does not equal the future. Simply means that at any point in time, Mike is joking in the chat here. He said he got kicked off. Hey, I shot you another link, man, if you want to jump on. But basically, the idea here is, if I am willing to truly decide, a decision means to turn away from all other options. And once someone truly makes a decision, there's nothing that can stop them from making that vision a reality. So we have to be cognizant of that and aware of that, and challenge ourselves and challenge others, because a lot of times people get caught up in their stories. They're stuck in the past. Hey, I'm just not an organized person. Or, hey, I'm just not great at this, or I'm just not great at that. I'm just not consistent. That's just how it is. It's like, that's not how it is. That's the past. If we made different choices, if we made different decisions today, we could change that for the future. So just realize that one of the lenses, one of the presuppositions, one of the core beliefs that I see great leaders have is that the past doesn't equal the future. So they're always open to the possibility of transformation. Always stay open to the possibility of transformation. This also makes sure that people aren't fixed in your mind, that people aren't permanently broken, that people aren't permanently flawed. Anybody can change at any point in time. It's a foundational principle of what it means to be human. We all have a personality, but it also changes over time, and we grow and we mature over time. And not giving people that opportunity, seeing them as fixed entities where the past does equal the future, limits that possibility of transformation. The next one I was going to talk a little bit about was that empowerment comes via responsibility. Empowerment comes via responsibility. Hang on one second. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we can get Mike back in here. All right. Hold tight. If you're in the chat, go ahead and tell me what your plans are for the day as we figure this out. How do I get him in here? All right, we might just have to roll without you, Mike. I don't know. All right. Well, if it's not going to let me do it, then we might have to roll without you, Mike, unfortunately, as much as I would love to have you. Yeah, I can't seem to get you in here, buddy, but we'll roll without you today, and we'll circle back later. Oh, here you are. Okay. All right, Mike, you're back. Mike, you're back. How are you? Hey, we can't hear you, so fix your mic, and then we'll keep rolling here. But so basically what we were just talking about was this idea that empowerment comes via responsibility. what I really mean by this is it's our job to actually help people become autonomous individuals. It's our job to help people become autonomous individuals. What that means is that our job is actually to empower them to take responsibility for themselves, not to solve their problems for them. And a lot of times we want to give people answers as leaders. A lot of times we have the answers. And so all we're going to try to do, I see this is a rookie mistake for leaders. And they mean well, and it actually is somewhat effective, but it's not effective in the long term. What they do is they actually probe to find where the problems are, and then they tell the person what they should do. Hey, what are your problems? Let me figure it out. Okay, here's what you should do. Here's why. This is somewhat effective as a leader, but it's not ultimately effective because what you've just done is you've given the man a fish as opposed to taught him how to fish. And we all know that if you teach a man to fish, he'll fish for a lifetime. So instead of just giving answers, we need to actually make sure that we're asking high quality questions to help people arrive at their own answers so they can actually understand and apply this principle cross-contextually to other situations in their life. And that's what it means to empower people via responsibility. Mike, are you with us? Can you hear me? And can we hear you? Nope, we can't hear you. So nice try, but not sure what's going on with your mic. But anyways, empowerment comes via responsibility. This also means we avoid codependent relationships. Codependent relationships are relationships where obviously there's a dependency on each other. And a lot of leaders like to be needed by their team. A lot of leaders like to be needed by their staff. And unfortunately, what this does is it actually artificially suppresses the limit that someone's able to reach in their life and in their business. And so anytime we're getting a little ego boost as leaders to whenever we help somebody out, whenever we say, okay, I taught that person this or I taught that person that, then we're actually still in a codependent relationship with somebody as opposed to simply operating with the idea to create them, help them become autonomous. So this is going to help you avoid codependent relationships and help you actually create independent, autonomous individuals that are going to be able to go out there on their own. Cool, dude. Mike, are you still with us or no? Why don't you try unplugging your mic and maybe just going with the standard microphone on your computer. We're rolling with the technology. We're getting everything figured out. It's all an experiment. Thanks for bearing with us, guys. We got about probably 10 more minutes today anyway, but everything on my side looks like it's working for you, Mike. So we just need you to figure out the mic situation. But the next thing I'll bring up as far as leadership principles is simply the idea that congruency is king, right? Congruency is king means whenever we are congruent in our lives, then that's going to translate in our business. Whenever we're congruent with ourselves, people can feel that, people can sense that, and they respond accordingly. So we have to ask ourselves, how in alignment with my own values am I? And you can reflect on this in a number of different ways, but how in alignment with your beliefs are you with your attitude? How in alignment with your belief systems and your values are you with your actions? How in alignment are you with your health? How in alignment are you with how you treat people, with how you think, with your willingness to go above and beyond? And if we aren't actually committed to being in alignment with what we purport to believe, then that creates an incongruency and people can tell. So one of the biggest things that I've always, practiced or tried to practice as much as possible is to try to be as congruent as possible and to not ask anyone on the other end of the line to do something that I wouldn't be personally able to do or willing to do myself. It's a really tall order. Sometimes we all fall short, but if we can hold that standard that congruency is king, then we can, obviously be more attractive to people and get them there. The last thing I'll kind of bring in, and then we can move on and wrap up for the day, is simply presence. Great leaders practice presence. They slow down. They strategically will practice awareness. They read between the lines when someone's talking. They listen to not just what's being said, but also what's being said that's not being said. They pay attention to the tone. They pay attention to the body language. They pay attention to what's going on with the other individual. Too often leaders are listening just to the language that's being spoken to them, and they're not listening to the subtext. It's our job to pay attention to the little signs and subtleties and clues that our people are giving us that is saying, hey, something's going on that I don't feel comfortable sharing just yet. Hey, I actually have a limiting belief about my capacity to perform this task, and I'm afraid to tell you. When a leader chooses to become present and listen and pay attention and be curious enough to ask the follow-up question, hey, I'm sensing a little hesitancy. What's going on, man? Hey, do you mind if I ask you a follow-up question there? I think there might be a blind spot here for you that you're unaware of. Are you open to some feedback? We're able to deliver messages that other leaders aren't able to receive, that aren't able to give. We're able to give them in a way where it actually can be received and the person can integrate the feedback rather than getting defensive. So practicing presence is the last thing I'll leave you with. I know we had some technical difficulties today. Thanks for rolling with us as we continue to perform this experiment of 75 podcasts in 75 days. It's been a fun ride. We're only on day 4. Tomorrow, we have a special guest, Andrew Evans. So if you can join us live, we're going to be live at 11:30 Eastern here on Facebook. So if you want to join us live for that, that'd be great. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. And I will leave you with that. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your journey to becoming better than rich. Thanks.